The ocean breeze caressed my face as I emerged from the car, the scent of salt and seaweed enveloping me in a familiar embrace. It was meant to be a serene escape. Just me, my sketch pad, and the gentle whispers of the waves. As the waves crashed against the rocks, my best friend practically thrust her house keys into my hand, insisting that I needed them. In the quiet moments following the end, she sought solace, a chance to mend her heart. She was justified in her feelings, yet the unexpectedness of it all caught me off guard. In the midst of healing, I found myself feeling so exposed. My heart, still tender, echoed with the chaos of my thoughts. With each step, I pulled my suitcase along a silent companion on this tumultuous journey. The front door of the quaint beach house stood invitingly, perched on the edge of a cliff, with windows that offered breathtaking views. The vast expanse of the blue horizon, my sanctuary, where I could escape and find peace. In a quest to find myself, I embarked on a journey that lasted a mere 24 hours until Zoe stepped into the scene. Zoe was the embodiment of charm, the girl who lived just next door, full of life and always ready for an adventure. Her infectious spirit made it nearly impossible to resist her allure. She was without a doubt my neighbor's daughter. Just a couple of years, my junior. She bounded over to me like an excited puppy the instant she spotted me unpacking. Just as I was savoring the last drops of my second cup of coffee, she burst into the room, arms wide open and a beaming smile on her face. "Hey, you're the artist," she exclaimed. "Right, she chirped, thrusting out a hand. Her energy was exhausting, but it was a charming encounter, and before I realized it, we found ourselves deep in conversation about a myriad of topics, from the beauty of art to her dreams of exploring the globe. As the evening unfolded, Zoe casually brought up her mother, Miranda. A bit of a recluse, Miranda had her own unique charm that intrigued me. It was during that night that I finally had the chance to meet her. She had urged me to join her for dinner, promising not just delicious food, but also delightful company. With no valid reason to decline, I found myself agreeing to go. With a hint of hesitation, I crossed the threshold into their warm cottage, where I was welcomed by the rich aroma of garlic and roasted vegetables filled the air. And then I caught sight of her. Miranda was standing there. She was nothing like I had imagined. Tall and poised, she moved with a grace that radiated kindness, of quiet confidence that drew you in, her dark wavy hair cascading around sharp cheekbones, and her eyes Her piercing blue gaze absorbed everything around her, radiating an unsettling intensity that captivated all who dared to meet it. At first, her lips remained untouched by a smile, but when it finally graced her face, it was gentle and almost hesitant, as if it were a secret waiting to be shared. She had never done it frequently before. "You must be Jade," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Melodic Zoe has been singing your praises endlessly. She tends to embellish," I responded. In an instant, I became acutely aware of the clamminess of my palms. Dinner was pleasant enough, yet there was something about Miranda's presence that lingered in the air. In a way that filled the room, she exuded a presence that was captivating, yet not overwhelming. There was an undeniable magnetism to her that drew everyone in. As she rambled on about her plans, I couldn't help but sneak glances at Miranda. Every now and then, our eyes would meet, and she would hold my gaze for a moment longer. As the night wore on, I found myself lingering in a state of exhaustion that had little to do with the company around me. There was something about Miranda that stirred a feeling within me, not quite negative, but rather in a way that left me pondering. My stomach knotted and my mind drifted away. I brushed it off as mere nerves trying to shake the feeling. After a night of feeling a bit rusty in social situations, the next morning found me on the back porch, lost in my sketches, when Zoe appeared. Her enthusiasm surged forth, unwavering and fierce, and I found myself contemplating that you should join us. This weekend, we embark on a little adventure, just the three of us, me, you, and Mom. I can hardly contain my excitement. Understand that I sought solitude, which is precisely why you need this, Zoe insisted. Come on, it'll be an adventure, plus Mom could really use some company. She's been feeling a bit trapped lately. Recently, I found myself captivated by Zoe's hopeful expression, which was simply impossible to ignore. Despite my reservations, I found myself saying yes, believing that a shift in surroundings might do us good. We set off that Friday morning, the car ready for the adventure ahead, filled with bags of snacks and an unexplainable energy that only Zoe could possess. Miranda's calm demeanor stood in stark contrast to the chaos around her. Zoe's relentless chatter filled the air as I sat in the back seat, feeling like an outsider in a world that was all her own. As the journey unfolded, I found myself captivated by a relationship that seemed to weave a complex tapestry of emotions. With each passing mile, my gaze lingered on the subtle exchanges between them, a bond that spoke volumes beyond my comprehension. Miranda glanced in the rearview mirror, her gaze steady and unwavering. Her hands gripped the wheel firmly, a sense of determination radiating from her, her profile illuminated by the gentle embrace of the morning sun. She spoke sparingly, yet when she did, her words held a certain gravity, as if each one was selected with great care, creating a moment that felt significant. There was a quality about it that both unnerved and intrigued me as we made our way to the cabin in the late afternoon. It stood in seclusion, surrounded by the whispering trees and the soft rustle of leaves. In a serene grove of trees where the sunlight danced upon the leaves and a small sparkling lake whispered secrets, Zoe found herself immersed in the beauty of nature. Without a moment's hesitation, we set off on our adventure, leaving Miranda and me to tackle the task of unloading the car. "Thanks for coming," Miranda said as we worked together. With bags in hand, Zoe left me little room to maneuver. I chuckled, attempting to ease the tension in the air. Miranda smiled, a flicker of amusement dancing in her eyes. She had a way of captivating those around her. As she pursued her desires, her words hung in the air, and for a fleeting moment I sensed the weight of her gaze held a subtle intensity. It wasn't overtly flirtatious yet. There was an undeniable spark in the way she looked at me, as if she discovered more than I was prepared to reveal. I occupied my hands with unpacking, attempting to. As we sat down for dinner that night, an unusual tension hung in the air, thick and palpable. The silence enveloped us, a heavy blanket that made every moment feel stretched and elongated. The sound of a fork clinking against a plate or the gentle sip of wine resonated in the air, each moment heightened as Zoe skillfully navigated the conversation. Though I was alive, I could sense Miranda's presence beside me, her arm lightly grazing mine, each time she reached for something. It was a gentle caress, seemingly ordinary, yet it sparked an unforeseen thrill that coursed through me. By the time we settled in for the night, a deep weariness had crept down my spine, leaving me utterly spent in a way that found ourselves with no choice but to share the other bedroom, as Zoe had taken possession of the first. The day's events seemed to fade away, leaving just the three of us in this unexpected arrangement. As the evening unfolded, a choice lingered in the air between the last available spot and the inviting couch. With a nonchalant tone, Miranda suggested, "There's plenty of space in the bed unless you'd prefer otherwise." "I'd rather take the couch," I said, attempting to sound casual. "The bed's fine, really." Slipped beneath the blankets, acutely aware of the warmth and presence of Miranda beside me, she moved with such care, each action measured and intentional, yet the atmosphere around us crackled with energy. I found myself wide awake, caught in the moment. For what seemed like an eternity, my mind was a chaotic web of uncertainty, a storm of emotions swirling within me. In search of an escape from the mundane, I hoped for a moment to refresh my mind. Yet what I discovered was something entirely different. In the stillness of the night, my heart pounded wildly, caught in a whirlwind of emotions I couldn't quite grasp. Curiosity danced in my mind as the dawn broke, the soft glow of the morning light filtering through the cabin's delicate curtains, gently rousing me from my slumber. Before I was ready, I rolled over, anticipating the emptiness beside me, but there was Miranda still lying there. As she lay there, her face serene and tranquil, I found myself entranced, unable to look away. How different she appeared when the walls she built came down. Her hair tousled, her true self shining through. With each steady breath, I caught a glimpse of something tender within her, a sight that tightened my chest. I chose not to linger on it. As I slipped out of bed, careful not to make a sound, I pulled on a cozy sweater and ventured outside into the refreshing morning air. The crisp air embraced me as I strolled towards the lake, my thoughts swirling in a chaotic dance. Being around Miranda felt like navigating a precarious path where every step was uncertain and the unknown loomed on either side. In that moment, I tried to convince myself that it was all in my head. After all, she was simply Zoe's mother, a figure of kindness in a world that often felt harsh. With an air of confidence and a hint of charm, I found myself questioning the tension that lingered. Perhaps it was merely a figment of my imagination, a creation of my own mind. As I wandered back to the cabin, my mind was a whirlwind of thoughts, yet the clarity I sought slipped away like sand through my fingers. By the time I arrived, Miranda was already there, her presence grounding me amidst the chaos of my overactive mind. Awake, she stood in this kitchen, a mug of coffee cradled in her hand. As I stepped in, she glanced over her shoulder, a smile playing on her lips. Into a gentle smile that wrapped me in a cozy warmth, she said, "You're up early." I said I couldn't sleep. I murmured, gesturing toward the coffee pot. "Mind if I help yourself?" As she stepped aside, allowing me to pour a cup, the air around us seemed to thicken, the distance between us shrinking in an unspoken moment. Then it was as if her essence enveloped the whole space. Eventually, Zoe graced us with her presence. The familiar excitement buzzed around her as she eagerly shared her plans for the day, dreaming of the adventure that awaited on the nearby trail, full of promise. At the pinnacle, the views were nothing short of breathtaking. Miranda and I shared a knowing look, and in that fleeting moment, it seemed for a moment that a spark of amusement danced in her eyes, as if we shared a secret understanding that Zoe's boundless enthusiasm could be both delightful and utterly draining. The hike turned out to be far more challenging than I had anticipated. By the time we finally reached the summit, my legs felt like they were on fire. Yet Zoe had. The journey had led to a breathtaking sight, where the lake shimmered under the warm embrace of the sun, and the surrounding forest stood tall and proud, a testament to nature's beauty. As we settled on a cluster of rocks, the vastness stretched endlessly around us, and we took a moment to catch our breath. As the morning unfolded, a wave of tranquility washed over me for the first time. Zoe, full of energy, chattered excitedly, drawing my attention to the landmarks around us and sharing her thoughts. As she spoke of her future travel plans, my thoughts wandered to Miranda. She sat in silence, her eyes locked on the horizon, lost in her own world. Her profile glowed softly in the sunlight, a thoughtful expression gracing her features. I felt a strong urge to inquire about her thoughts, but the moment lingered in silence. The inquiry lingered in the air, heavy and revealing, yet I chose to remain quiet, allowing the moment we began our descent, a hush fell over the group, the weight of exhaustion wrapping around us like a heavy blanket. As we made our way back to the cabin, Zoe declared her intention to take a nap, leaving Miranda and me in the quiet that followed. The atmosphere was thick yet oddly soothing, as Miranda sat at the table capturing the moment on film. As I flipped through the pages of the book she had brought, my pencil danced across the paper, capturing her essence effortlessly. Her posture so graceful, and the way her fingers delicately rested, drew me in, compelling me to sketch her without a second thought. With a gentle tilt of her head, the words cascaded onto the page, each one flowing effortlessly like a river of thoughts and emotions. "You're staring," she said without looking up, and my heart skipped a beat. "Sorry, With a hurried motion, I snapped my sketchbook shut, my words tumbling out in a rush. "I didn't mean to," I started, but she interrupted, her voice calm and reassuring. "It's fine," she said, her expression softening. Her voice was steady, yet there was an undercurrent that eluded my understanding. I was familiar with it. The way she spoke so matter-of-factly left an impression. I found myself pondering how many souls had gazed upon her with the same intensity as I did, and how often she had allowed them to linger in her presence. A desire to speak swelled within me, yet the words eluded me, so I found solace in the quiet of the porch, stepping away from the moment. As the sun dipped below the horizon, we gathered under the open sky, savoring the gentle breeze, while sharing a meal al fresco. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow of orange and pink across the tranquil lake, Zoe stumbled upon a bottle, its secrets waiting to be uncovered. In the warmth of the kitchen, surrounded by the rich aroma of wine, our glasses clinked softly, and the atmosphere shifted. With each sip, the words flowed more freely, revealing the depths of our thoughts and feelings. Zoe recounted tales from her childhood, weaving moments that brought forth laughter from Miranda, pure and unfiltered. The unexpected sound caught me off guard. It was more delicate than I had imagined, lending her an air of gentleness. As Zoe stepped inside to fetch something, the moment felt almost ethereal. Miranda leaned back in her chair, her eyes fixed on me with that same intense gaze I was starting to recognize. "You've been quiet," she said. "Just taking it all in," I replied. Though it wasn't completely accurate. I remained silent because I doubted my ability to express myself without hesitation. Offering something to her felt like being too close to a fire. I craved the warmth, yet I feared the burn. "You're not as protected as you believe," she remarked, her voice playful, yet her words slicing through me like a sharp blade. It was as if a blade had etched itself into your expression. Words escaped me, leaving only the weight of silence hanging in the air, stretched between us until Zoe returned her presence, shattering the enchantment Miranda had woven that night. I couldn't. In the stillness of the night, I found myself lying in bed, my gaze fixed on the ceiling, as memories danced through my mind, each moment replaying like a cherished film. As the day unfolded in my mind, I reassured myself that I was merely overthinking once more, that there was nothing out of the ordinary in the way Miranda had acted. There were moments when words were exchanged, glances lingered, and the space between us felt just a touch too intimate over dinner. Yet despite all of that, I found it hard to accept what was unfolding before me. At last I succumbed to sleep, though it was restless. Suddenly I was jolted awake by the eerie sound of the door slowly creaking open. My heart raced, leaping into my throat as I sat up, my eyes slowly adjusting to the darkness. There stood Miranda in the doorway, her silhouette framed by the faint light behind her. In the quiet of the night, a silhouette stood softly bathed in the gentle glow of moonlight. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice barely breaking the stillness. In a voice that barely broke the silence, I spoke softly. "I didn't mean to disturb your rest. I just wanted to see how you were doing." "I'm fine," I said, though my voice trembled more than I meant it to. She paused, uncertainty flickering in her eyes. Pausing in the doorway, time seemed to stretch endlessly before she finally took a step forward. Inside, perched on the edge of the bed, the atmosphere was thick with unvoiced emotions. She remained still, her fingers never brushing against mine. Yet the air around us crackled with an undeniable energy. "Miranda," I started, but words eluded me, leaving me at a loss for how to continue. Finished the sentence, she turned to me, her eyes searching mine, and for a moment I felt the weight of unspoken words hanging in the air between us. A silent connection that seemed to stretch on forever. Thought she might utter a word to dissolve the heaviness in the air, yet she remained silent. Instead, she moved with a graceful slowness, each step purposeful as she made her way back to the door. "Good night," she whispered softly, leaving a lingering sense of calm in the air. "Jade," she whispered gently before slipping away, leaving me alone with a whirlwind of thoughts racing through my mind, and a heart that raced with anticipation. The next morning, I awoke with a sense of something lingering in the air. The memory of Miranda departing my room, her essence hanging in the air like a whisper in the shadows of my thoughts. The atmosphere thick with unspoken words, confronted by a weight I couldn't quite articulate. Uncertainty gripped me as I pushed the blankets aside, summoning the courage to face her. As I struggle to rise, my body feels heavy, yet my mind races in an unending cycle of thoughts. As I entered the kitchen, a wave of uncertainty washed over me, for there stood Miranda, wrapped in a cozy, loose sweater, her presence both familiar and enigmatic. And jeans, her hair still damp from a shower. She looked up as I entered her space. Her expression was a mystery, the coffee steaming fresh in front of her. "It's fine," she said, her tone steady, as if nothing had happened at all. As I poured myself a cup, I deliberately kept my back turned to her, feeling the weight of her gaze lingering on me longer than I expected. Evaluating the situation yet, her silence lingered in the air. The void left by Zoe was unmistakable. The vibrant pulse of life could have shattered the stillness, providing me a reason to sidestep the unease. Yet she remained in slumber, leaving Miranda and me enveloped in this delicate sphere of unvoiced sentiments that I believed we could explore. "The canoe out today," Miranda said after a moment, her voice steady yet determined. "The water was just right for it," I assured, my voice sharp and concise. I struggled to find another way to express myself. Part of me felt the urge to confront her about what happened last night, to question her about why she entered my room. Yet another part of me, the part of me that feared the answer, held my tongue as we glided through the morning on the lake, the canoe slicing effortlessly through the water. Through the glassy surface, Zoe had chosen to linger behind, insisting she required more rest, which left Miranda and me to. As we glided through the water, the tranquility enveloped us, a gentle embrace that was both calming and stifling. The only melody was the steady splash of our oars, a heartbeat in the stillness. With the gentle splash of paddles echoing in the stillness, and the distant call of a bird soaring above, a sense of tension hung in the air as Miranda observed. Shattering the stillness, she sat opposite me, her eyes unwavering, and with unwavering resolve I responded. "I'm fine," perhaps a bit too hastily. She tilted her head ever so slightly, curiosity dancing in her eyes. Her eyes narrowed, a flicker of disbelief crossing her face. "You don't have to pretend with me, Jade," I said softly. "I know what you've been through." Recently, the mention of my breakup swept over me unexpectedly like a sudden gust of wind. It was a feeling that tipped the scales within me, a whisper of doubt that lingered. I hadn't spoken it aloud yet. The truth danced just beyond my grasp, revealing fragments of my recent experiences. The ache of a past love lingered, a scar that still throbbed, yet it wasn't the cause of my current feelings. It felt as though I was balancing precariously on the brink of an unknown force. And then she inquired gently, her voice trailing off into a whisper. As a wave of emotion washed over me, I felt a tightness in my chest. The words lingered, caught in my throat, and I found myself hesitating. Words remained unspoken, hidden away in the moment as the sunlight twinkled upon the water's surface. Her presence enveloped me, overwhelming and intense. I found myself shaking my head in response. As I turned my gaze, the weight of her silence enveloped us, unspoken yet profound. She chose not to press me, but the air between us thickened with unacknowledged thoughts. In silence, we navigate our way back to the cabin, an unvoiced understanding hanging between us. The space around us filled with unspoken thoughts. Between us, the connection felt stronger than ever. The rest of the day drifted by in a dreamy haze, as Zoe had. As we made our way back, her laughter filled the air, a vibrant melody that chased away the silence. I held on to her spirit, drawing strength from her infectious joy. In that moment, I clung to my lifeline, using it to steady myself and evade the weight of Miranda's piercing gaze that I could sense lingering on me. As the sun sank beneath the horizon that evening, casting a warm glow over everything, Zoe proposed the idea of gathering around a campfire. Lake Miranda and I crafted it side by side, while Zoe busily collected marshmallows and chocolate from the cabin, working alongside us. Miranda was nearly intolerable, the closeness intensifying the tension I had been attempting to overlook whenever our hands accidentally touched. As I recoiled from a piece of firewood, feeling as though it had seared my skin, her gaze met mine with a silent fervor that sent my heart into a wild flutter. "Are we okay?" she asked suddenly, her voice barely above a whisper. I froze, my hands still gripping the "What do you mean you've been distant?" she asked, her eyes searching for answers in the grain of the wood. "If I've done something to upset you, I assure you, you haven't." I just found myself interrupting my own voice. More cutting than I meant. "I'm simply worn out, that's the truth." She didn't seem to buy it, but she released it, pivoting toward the flames, silence enveloping us. I breathed out unsteadily. My nerves were frayed and my thoughts spun wildly as I sat by the campfire. It was meant to be a moment of relaxation, a chance to bond under the stars, yet everything felt so chaotic. Amidst the twinkling lights, my mind wandered. Zoe, with her infectious laughter, was in her element, sharing stories and brightening the atmosphere. As I sat there, Miranda's quiet presence beside me felt like an anchor grounding me in the moment. I couldn't help but reflect on the tales that surrounded us. Fleeing with each movement she made each time her arm grazed against mine, I sensed a rush of exhilaration. As the moments unfolded, Zoe found herself needing a brief respite, so she quietly stepped away to fetch her phone. As the night deepened, it was just Miranda and me by the flickering fire, the flames dancing and crackling, creating a warm glow that enveloped us. As the shadows danced across her face, she turned to me, her expression a mystery waiting to be unraveled. In that fleeting moment, I held my breath, hoping she would speak, but instead she extended her hand. Her hand grazed mine, a gentle exploration, as if she were gauging the warmth of the moment. I didn't retreat. The sensation was delicate, almost ethereal. Almost hesitant, a jolt surged through me that I couldn't dismiss. My breath caught, and I turned to gaze at my heart raced within me, as her eyes sought mine, a gentle softness in her gaze yet. It was a moment of sheer intensity, as if the very earth beneath my feet was crumbling away. Jade stood there, a figure of strength amidst the chaos. Began her voice barely above a whisper. Just as she was about to finish, Zoe's voice rang out. As she stepped out from the cabin, the air felt charged with tension. Miranda's heart raced as she instinctively pulled her hand back, a sudden rush of uncertainty washing over her. As I felt my expression shift into something more guarded, I turned away, my thoughts swirling in a tempest of confusion and emotions. I found myself unprepared for the darkness that enveloped me. As I lay there wide awake, my thoughts danced through the memories, each one echoing in the silence. In that fleeting moment by the fire, her touch lingered, her gaze held me captive, and the way she whispered my name was everything. It consumed my thoughts, an unrelenting tide that I couldn't escape. I longed to cast it aside, to act as if it were just a fleeting moment, yet here I was, unable to shake its grip. The memory lingered, weaving its way into every shadow of my thoughts, as I finally surrendered to the embrace of sleep. It began with a disquieting awareness that I was ensnared, unsure of how to free myself from this predicament, accompanied by a faint sense of unease. The morning light broke through, casting a new glow on everything. Yet a part of me, shadowed and uncertain, hesitated. There was something in the air, a tension that danced between Miranda and me, hinting at unspoken words and hidden truths. Hung heavy in the air, each look and every word exchanged crackling with an electric intensity. A weight unfamiliar and heavy settled upon Zoe, who remained blissfully unaware. Lost in her usual rhythm, with an animated spirit, she excitedly shared her thoughts about another hike she dreamed of embarking on before our departure. My thoughts danced in a whirlwind, replaying the enchanting moments from the night before, the flicker of the firelight, her gentle touch, and the way everything felt so alive. Her voice took on a gentle quality as she spoke my name. "I'll sit this one out," Miranda declared. As she leisurely enjoyed her breakfast, the steam from her coffee curling into the air, there was a tranquility about her that seemed almost practiced. She was skillfully keeping up a facade. "What, why?" Zoe pouted. "It's our last day. Don't back out now. I believe you and Jade could really benefit from some time spent together, Miranda." She replied smoothly, her gaze flicking to me for just a moment before returning to her cup. "Besides, my legs need a break," Zoe groaned. Yet I chose not to press the matter any further, a peculiar blend of relief and disappointment washing over me. There was a tug-of-war within me. One side craved space from Miranda, while the other, the side I was desperately trying to suppress, yearned for her presence. Yet I found myself caught in the middle, torn between conflicting desires. I ventured alongside Zoe, yearning for the chaos of the hike to bring clarity to my thoughts. The trail unfolded before us, a stunning tapestry of winding paths and breathtaking scenery. Through the thick, whispering trees, a breathtaking waterfall awaited, yet my heart felt heavy. Zoe's chatter filled the air, vibrant and lively, but I found it hard to fully embrace the beauty around us. Her words intertwined a tapestry of sound that drowned out my thoughts, too overwhelming to allow anything else to seep through. The memory of Miranda's touch lingered in my mind, her gaze warm and inviting as we sat by the fire. It wasn't merely the moment that captivated me, it left me feeling as if I was balancing on the brink of an unknown abyss, something beyond my grasp. "Are you okay?" Zoe asked. In an instant, I burst through the fog of my thoughts. "Oh, I'm fine," I replied hastily, pushing a smile onto my face. "Smile," she said, narrowing her eyes at me. "Is it my mom? Did she say something to you? What? No." I replied too quickly, caught off guard by Zoe's keen insight. It took me by surprise, and I hurried to appear convincing. "I've just got so much swirling in my thoughts." She looked at me intently for a moment, with a hint of doubt in my expression. I finally decided to release my grip on it. A silent sigh of relief escaped my lips. Preparing myself for the honesty I had shown, I realized I needed to regain control over whatever was happening. What was unfolding between Miranda and me, if it was anything at all, seemed destined to remain just out of reach. Zoe placed her trust in me, believing that Miranda was her mother. The entire situation felt surreal as we navigated through it together. As I made my way back to the cabin, the sun hung low in the sky, casting a warm glow over everything. There was Miranda perched on the porch, engrossed in a book, lost in her own world. She sat quietly, her gaze locked on the horizon, her expression distant and contemplative, as if lost in a world of her own. With a burst of energy, Zoe leaped through the door, declaring her hunger. I paused momentarily, taken aback. Amidst the tranquil woods, Miranda found herself at a crossroads, torn between the comforting embrace of companionship and the alluring call of a solitary adventure. The path ahead shimmered with possibilities, each step echoing the whispers of nature, urging her to choose wisely. Inquired, shattering the stillness. "Yeah," I replied, moving nearer, my voice echoing in the quiet. In the stillness, beauty enveloped us. She nodded, yet her gaze remained distant, her attention captured by something beyond my reach. At the edge of the horizon, I hesitated, caught in a moment of uncertainty, torn between the desire to remain and the urge to leave. Then, with a gentle finality, she closed the door behind her. She held the book tightly, her movements slow and deliberate. "Walk with me," she said, and I followed. She didn't respond yet. I trailed behind her along the winding path. At last, her voice emerged steady and resolute. "I haven't," she declared. I echoed her sentiment, though we both. She halted in her tracks, pivoting to confront me, her expression revealing everything. "It's clear as day, Jade. No need for masks. I see the unease I've caused you." Her honesty caught me off guard, leaving me momentarily speechless. As she stepped closer, her unwavering gaze held me captive, and I felt my heart race. With a breath caught in her throat, she spoke softly. "I didn't mean to complicate things, but I think we both know this isn't nothing." Her words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. It crashed over me like a powerful tide, leaving me grappling for stability. She was right as always. What unfolded between us was far from ordinary. It was tangled and perplexing, filled with a sense of wrongness. Yet it carried an undeniable weight that I couldn't ignore. I opened my mouth ready to speak, but as she stepped closer, the words vanished into thin air. "Jade," she called, her voice wrapping around me, softly spoken, a mere breath of sound. "If I am mistaken, please reveal it to me now." My voice faltered, for my heart was the sound reverberated in my chest. A rhythm so intense, I believed she could sense it as she extended her hand, brushing against mine. I lingered in the moment, the touch soft and almost shy, yet a shiver coursed through me, impossible to dismiss. She leaned in, her movements deliberate, granting me every opportunity. Unity tried to hold me back, but I couldn't resist. When her lips softly touched mine, it felt as if time stood still. In that moment, the world held its breath. The kiss was gentle, filled with uncertainty, yet it held the weight of everything Zoe felt, was determined to assist me with my bags. Miranda stayed by the car, her actions measured and intentional as she. After unloading her own things, I expressed my gratitude to Zoe for her assistance. She responded with a swift hug before dashing back outside to lend her support. "Mother." I observed them through the window, their effortless connection a haunting reminder of what I stood to lose if I allowed myself to linger on it. Emotions swirled within me, uninvited and unexpected. The house, once filled with laughter and warmth, now echoed with an unsettling silence after their departure. In the heart of the living room, I found myself at a crossroads, a sense of uncertainty enveloping me. My sketchbook lay invitingly on the coffee table, a silent companion waiting for inspiration to strike. It had remained undisturbed since that journey, and I found myself pausing before reaching for it. As I turned the pages, my fingers lingered on the sketches I had created. Miranda stood there, her silhouette framed perfectly, her hands poised gracefully. The light danced around her, highlighting the contours of her profile in a mesmerizing way. They gathered around a palpable energy in the air. I let my finger glide over the contours, feeling a deep ache swell within my chest. I found myself unable to escape the thoughts swirling in my mind. I attempted to immerse myself in the rhythm of chores, scrubbing the kitchen until it gleamed and reorganizing the bookshelves, but still the weight lingered. The clamor in my mind was relentless, each thought spiraling back to her, her voice echoing through the chaos. Her touch, the way she gazed at me, felt as if she could see beyond all my barriers. Loathed the way she occupied my thoughts, yet I found myself unable to evict her from the corners of my mind. As the evening settled in, a sense of restlessness washed over me, mingling with the exhaustion that clung to my bones. I found myself on the porch, gazing out at the vast ocean, the rhythmic sound of the waves creating a soothing backdrop to my thoughts. The waves crashing around me did little to soothe the tempest within. My phone buzzed beside me, and I reached for it, yearning for. Instead of getting lost in distractions, a message from Miranda caught my eye. "Can we talk?" My heart raced as I gazed at the screen, my fingers poised above the keyboard. Uncertainty washed over me. I couldn't decipher her intentions, nor was I sure if I truly wanted to find out. Listening closely, I felt compelled to respond. After a moment of gathering my thoughts, I crafted a straightforward reply. The moment her message arrived, I felt a rush of excitement. "I'm outside," it read. I glanced up, and there she stood at the edge of the driveway, her stance uncertain, hands tucked deep in her pockets as if weighing the moment that lay ahead. In that fleeting moment, I considered acting as if I hadn't noticed her, but the uncertainty etched on her face held me back. There was a vulnerability in her gaze that made me pause. In a moment of unexpected fragility, I found myself rising to meet her, my steps carrying me closer to the unfolding scene. Each step was slow and deliberate, the air around us thick with unspoken words. As I finally reached you, the weight of our silence hung heavily in the atmosphere. In the silence that enveloped us, she gazed into my eyes, her own searching for something unspoken, and I felt that in the comforting embrace of her presence, uncertainty lingered in the air. I wasn't sure if you'd respond, she finally admitted. Her voice was soft, almost lost in the air. I nearly missed it, I confessed. But now here we are, she replied with a nod. With her gaze fixed on the ground, I felt the weight of unspoken words pressing on my chest. I just needed to break the silence to remind her of what we had promised. We could put an end to this, but thoughts of you linger in my mind. I understand it's not right, and I realize how tangled this all is. But Miranda, Her voice trembled as she interrupted. This can't happen, you know that I do, she said. In an instant, her gaze locked onto mine once more. Yet that only deepened the complexity of the moment for her. Honesty hit me like a punch to the gut, and I turned my gaze away, struggling to collect my thoughts. Zoe trusts me, I murmured, my voice barely above a whisper. With a voice so soft it barely breaks the silence, she gazes up at you, a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. If she were to discover the truth, it would change everything, but for now, she remains blissfully unaware. With unwavering conviction, Miranda declared that she would never cause harm to her or to you. Her words resonating with sincerity hung in the air, and for a moment we simply stood there, the silence stretching like a fragile thread between us. In the quiet moments shared, I found myself yearning to trust her, to surrender to the unknown that lay before us. Yet the weight of what was at risk held me back, anchoring my heart in uncertainty. I finally admitted, my voice trembling. I'm sorry. Her expression shifted, disappointment washing over her. Nodded, her expression brimming with a profound understanding that tugged at my heart. I understand, she whispered gently. I just needed you to know what's in my heart. Trust was hard for me. I found myself unable to speak, so I simply nodded, the lump in my throat making it difficult to breathe. She took a step back, her movements graceful yet heavy with unspoken words. With each step she moved slowly and deliberately, and I stood there captivated as she faded into the darkness of the night. I lingered in the silence long after she had departed, the rhythmic crashing of the waves, the sole anchor to my thoughts, as I struggled to piece together the fragments of my mind. As dawn broke, I found myself piecing everything back together. The air around me was heavy, almost stifling, as if it carried the weight of unspoken thoughts. In the stillness of dawn, I sensed a change in the air, subtle yet profound. As I opened my eyes, a heaviness settled upon my heart, an unshakable burden that lingered with me. My mind kept drifting back to Miranda, her gaze lingering in my memory. As she turned to leave, sleep had evaded me, and the signs were all too clear. As I gazed into the bathroom mirror, my reflection mirrored the weariness within me, appearing as drained and empty as my spirit. The day had slipped away in a fog, each moment a struggle to break free. In a world where distractions danced just out of reach, every effort to shift my attention felt like a fleeting dream. A sketch, a book, even the vast ocean view, each one slipped through my fingers, like sand, leaving me yearning for something more, something to anchor my wandering thoughts. Her words echoed in my mind, the vulnerability in her voice wrapping around me like a gentle embrace. It was as if her presence lingered, a soft shadow that refused to fade away. I found myself unable to escape. It overwhelmed me completely. I despised how profoundly she had embedded herself in my thoughts. The presence she held in my mind was undeniable, yet no matter how hard I tried to push it away, it lingered. As the evening settled in, I found myself unable to endure it any longer. The stillness of the house weighed heavily on me. The echoes of each creak and groan surrounded me, amplifying the solitude that weighed heavily on my heart as I took a step forward. Stepping outside, I sought solace in the crisp air, yearning for clarity, yet it only deepened the whirlwind within me. The waves, restless and wild, crashed against the shore, their rhythm steady and unchanging, creating a sharp contrast to the stillness of the land. In the distance, the sound echoed a timeless dance between water and earth, a story unfolding with each surge and retreat. Amidst the turmoil within, a sudden buzz from my pocket drew me away from my swirling thoughts. I paused, my heart racing, anticipating another message from Miranda. But instead, it was Zoe, her name glowing on the screen. As I looked at the screen, a wave of guilt washed over me, while I responded to her cheerful voice that instantly filled the air. "Hey Jade, how's the hermit life treating you?" "It's fine," I replied, trying to mask my true feelings. There's a soft chuckle, a gentle reminder of what I truly needed. "We feel your absence here. Things have been a bit off with Mom. It's been so still since our return. I can sense she longs for your presence." Just hearing Miranda's name sent a twist of unease through me, that's for sure. She felt weary, the journey had taken its toll. Perhaps that was the reason she mused. Regardless, I found myself, "I'm considering stopping by tomorrow. I have a few things to drop off, and I thought it would be nice to spend some time together." My heart raced at the thought. At the thought of encountering her, the weight of hidden truths loomed large, casting a shadow over the moment. "That sounds wonderful," I replied, wishing my voice would remain steady. "Just send me a message when you're on your way." After he hung up, I found myself sitting on the porch for what felt like an eternity, gazing out at the world beyond. As the horizon stretched before me, the thought of seeing Zoe stirred a whirlwind of emotions within. Relief washed over me at the prospect of her vibrant energy and the sound of her easy laughter, yet a shadow of dread lingered in the corners of my mind. The weight of the hidden truth pressed down on me, a truth so potent that its revelation could unravel the very fabric of my world. The next morning, I immersed myself in a whirlwind of cleaning, determined to transform my home into a space that reflected clarity, rather than the haze I had been lost in. Since the trip, Zoe arrived around noon, her usual whirlwind of energy filling the air. In the quiet of the room, she let a bag of groceries tumble onto the counter, a playful smile lighting up her face. "I thought I'd bring some snacks," she exclaimed, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "You've likely been surviving on a diet of cereal and coffee," I admitted with a chuckle, feeling a sense of gratitude for the simple things. As the sun began to set, she brought out her usual charm, and for the next hour, we found ourselves on the porch, lost in conversation. In a moment that felt like a cherished memory, laughter echoed around me, and for a fleeting instant I was transported back to a time when I truly felt whole. As the afternoon drifted by, Zoe's light-hearted conversation shifted unexpectedly, leading her to say, "I've been meaning to ask." She asked, her voice taking on a more serious note, "Is everything okay with you and Mom?" The question struck me like a sudden blow to the stomach. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice trembling. With a cautious tone, she frowned and said, "I don't know, you two are fine during the..." Our journey was unforgettable, but since our return, there's been a shift in her. She's become more reserved, as if a shadow of something lingers in the air. Not wanting to disturb her, I quickly added, "I'm sure she's just worn out. You know how she can be." Constantly lost in her thoughts, pondering over various things, perhaps he was right, even if her voice didn't quite convey it. I'm certain there's something elusive, a feeling that lingers just out of reach. It's as if I've pushed myself into a corner, searching for that missing piece. With a chuckle, you attempt to guide the discussion away from risky subjects, reminding yourself that you're reading too much into it. Your mother is perfectly okay after all. She likely just requires a moment of solitude. Zoe nodded, yet her face held a pensive look. I despised the thought of deceiving her. Yet I found myself cornered, for the reality was tangled and intricate, and there was no easy way out. By the time she departed, I found myself utterly exhausted, burdened by the emotional toll of our journey together. Words weighed heavily upon me, a burden I could hardly bear. I stood there watching her car fade away into the distance, my heart constricted by the heavy chains of remorse. As the weight of the secret pressed down on me, a gnawing sense of dread took root in my heart. It felt as though it was consuming me from the inside out. Yet the thought of revealing the truth to Zoe loomed over me, a daunting alternative that filled me with uncertainty. It was a night like no other, as I found myself in the living room, lost in thought, gazing at my sketchbook. Unbeknownst to her, the pages came alive with sketches of Miranda, capturing the essence of her face. With hands that sketched and lines that were careful and deliberate, I traced one of the drawings with my finger, feeling a deep ache in my chest. With a fervor that was almost palpable, the sudden buzz of my phone shattered the stillness, drawing my gaze to the screen. As I gazed at the screen, my heart raced at the sight of Miranda's name. Her words were simple, yet they held a weight that sent a thrill through me. Yet filled with significance, may I catch a glimpse of you. If only for a fleeting moment, I paused, my fingers lingering. As I hovered over the keyboard, an instinct deep within me urged me to resist, to shield myself from the impending spiral I was about to enter. Despite my instincts urging me otherwise, a gentle knock echoed through the room, drawing my attention to the door. As the door swung open, there stood Miranda on the porch, her face a canvas of uncertainty, intertwined with resolve. She gazed ahead, her eyes reflecting a silent story waiting to unfold. Weary as if sleep had eluded her for far too long, she stood before me, and in that moment my determination began to waver. "I shouldn't be here," she whispered, her voice heavy with unspoken burdens. Her voice was soft, yet it drew me in. I moved aside, allowing her presence to fill the space within me. With a heavy heart, she stepped into the living room, her gaze drawn to the open space before her. On the table lay a sketchbook, and as she picked it up, her expression softened. Flipping through the pages, she realized, "You've been capturing me in your art." Her voice carried a hint of something elusive, and despite my efforts, I found myself unable to resist. Confession slipped from my lips, barely a whisper, as I gazed at her. "You're impossible to forget." She set with her sketchbook set aside. She turned to me, her eyes probing mine. "Jade, I don't—" An uncertainty wrapped around me as her words crashed over me like a tidal wave, leaving me unsteady, as if the very earth beneath my feet had begun to tremble. As I stood there, a whirlwind of emotions swirled around us. I felt the urge to urge her to step away to shield us from the turmoil we were igniting together, yet the magnetic force of her presence held me captive. Her presence enveloped me, drawing me in. I took a step closer, my breath unsteady as I gazed at her. "Miranda, we can't keep doing this," I said, though my voice wavered, betraying my uncertainty. "It's overwhelming, so intricate." I remember her saying it, her voice trembling, "But please just tell me you—" She sensed the unspoken words lingering in the air, the truth evident in my expression. As she extended her hand, a silent connection formed between us, heavy with unshared thoughts. As our paths intertwined, the universe seemed to dissolve around us, and in that fleeting instant, I felt a surge of resistance rising within me. To push her away, but instead I surrendered, closing my eyes and allowing myself to drift into the soft warmth of her hand brushed against mine, a gentle connection that held a world of unspoken emotions. She was impossibly gentle, as though she feared I might retreat. But I couldn't not from her. The atmosphere enveloped the space, thick with the weight of unspoken words and lingering emotions. For a fleeting moment, I allowed myself to escape the burdens of the past. There were countless reasons why this couldn't happen. Her eyes locked onto mine, searching, waiting, and She offered me a moment, a delicate pause, where I could either retreat or plunge deeper into a realm we both understood was irreversible. The uncertainty loomed, and I found myself at a crossroads, unsure of the path ahead. To cease the sensation, I confessed, my voice quivering. The words seemed to transform into a... In a moment of vulnerability, I finally let go of the truth I had kept hidden for ages. Her gaze turned gentle, a warmth spreading between us. Her shoulders relaxed as if my admission had lifted some invisible weight off her. "Neither do I," she said, her voice low. I attempted, yet you linger in my thoughts, an indelible presence." The fragility in her voice stirred something deep within me, a longing that tightened around my heart. I yearned to express it. In that moment, he felt a deep urge to provide her with comfort and clarity, yet the right words eluded him, slipping away like shadows in the fading light. Instead, I moved nearer the space between us, shrinking until I could sense. As the warmth of her breath enveloped me, she reached up, her fingers gently brushing against my cheek. As I closed my eyes, surrendering to the gentle caress, the tempest within me swirled fiercely. "Jade," she whispered, her voice a soothing balm amidst the chaos. Whispered softly, a sense of foreboding in the air. "We're going to hurt people if we do this." "I know," I said. Her voice trembled, a fragile whisper in the air, as uncertainty wrapped around us. She hesitated, her hand lingering on my face, a bittersweet touch that spoke of unspoken goodbyes. Her thumb gliding along the curve of my jaw. We lingered in that moment, caught in a timeless pause. In the stillness, the heaviness of our choices bore down upon us. And then she drew closer. Her lips grazed mine in a kiss that felt tentative and exploratory, as if she feared shattering something precious. A delicate thread wove our connection, and as I kissed her, I savored the tender softness of that fleeting moment, engulfing me, and for a brief moment, everything else faded into the background. But the truth hit me like a tidal wave, and I recoiled, my heart racing. "We can't," I whispered, my voice trembling, and uncertain. "We can't do this." Miranda's expression changed, revealing a blend of sorrow. With a gentle expression crossing her face, I could sense her words spoken softly yet veiled in pretense. "It lingers, refusing to fade." I took a step back, craving the distance to gather my thoughts. In the midst of it all, a heavy weight settled in the air. It felt so unjust for Zoe, for all of us. Each moment seemed to deepen the turmoil, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we were only adding to the chaos. Understood her words, unwavering in tone, yet her gaze betrayed a whirlwind of feelings within. I found myself drawn back to you, unable to resist the pull, even if it was just to whisper farewell, embracing the weight of finality. Her words struck me with the force of a blow to the heart, and I whispered my farewell, my voice barely rising above a murmur. Her gaze locked onto mine, steady and unyielding. She spoke softly. "We can't keep doing this, Jade. It feels so unjust, especially for you. My concern for you runs deep, and I can't bear the thought of pulling you further into this chaos. I had hoped to." I tried to express that I didn't want to say farewell. Yet deep down, I knew she was right. Whatever this was, it was pulling me apart. The boundaries we had crossed were indelible, and the more we clung to what was unattainable, the weight of our actions loomed large, and I finally spoke the word hanging in the air like a heavy truth. "Farewell," she nodded, her face reflecting a gentle sorrow that echoed my own. "Take care of yourself, Jade. You too," I said, my voice trembling. She turned and she made her way to the door, each movement slow and purposeful, as though every step was a battle. I stood there watching her leave, feeling a weight in my chest, tight with an ache that felt unbearable. When the door closed behind her, the silence that followed was deafening. Stood there for what felt like an eternity. My thoughts a tangled mess of regret and longing. Saying goodbye was never meant to be this hard. It brought a flicker of relief, a whisper of closure, yet what remained was a profound emptiness within me. Longed to convince myself that releasing her was the only path to safeguard our hearts. Yet it felt as though something precious slipped through my fingers, never to return. The night unfolded in a haze, as I struggled to divert my thoughts from the ache within me. My thoughts wandered back to her, the melody of her voice echoing in my mind, the warmth of her hand resting in mine, and the sorrow reflected in her eyes as she bid farewell and slumber eluded her. When it finally arrived, it was fitful and uneasy, and filled with dreams I couldn't escape. The next morning, I awoke with a sense of finality wrapped around me, a heavy blanket of goodbyes. The house echoed with emptiness more than it ever had before. In the stillness, echoes of what once was lingered, a haunting reminder of all that had slipped away. I understood deep down that this place could no longer hold me, not anymore. In that moment, I realized I had to forge ahead, piecing together the fragments she had left in her wake. The day unfolded before me as I embarked on this journey of self-reconstruction. As I gathered my belongings, each item felt like a tiny step toward regaining a semblance of order. The sketchbook rested quietly on the coffee table, a silent witness to my journey. The table was adorned with pages brimming with her drawings, and for a fleeting moment I found myself lost in thought. Leaving it behind felt impossible. It had woven itself into the fabric of my being, becoming a chapter in the tale of who I am. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over everything, and I felt a sense of urgency. It was time to go, and I found myself standing there ready to embark on a new journey. On the porch, gazing out at the ocean for one final moment, the waves crashed against the shore. The shore danced in its eternal rhythm, while the ache in my chest lingered, a constant companion. It was a constant echo of what had slipped through my fingers. Yet deep down, I understood the necessity of forging ahead. Remaining in this place would only bind me to memories that no longer served me. As I drove away, the horizon unfolded before me, vast and filled with uncertainty. Uncertainty loomed ahead, and the duration of recovery was a mystery. Yet amidst the shadows, a flicker of hope ignited within me, a feeling I hadn't experienced in ages. Farewell felt like a turning point, perhaps the dawn of a fresh chapter. The moments that came after my exit from the beach house faded into a haze of sameness and solitude that I had created for myself in the past. In the apartment, I attempted to slip back into familiar habits, yet everything seemed altered. The quiet of my surroundings was no longer the same. It wrapped around me like a warm embrace, echoing the stillness that lingered after Miranda's departure, a void I bore within me. All around me, I immersed myself in my creativity, dedicating countless hours at my desk, sketching, and in the quiet moments I found solace in the strokes of my brush. Each color a whisper of feelings I struggled to articulate. It was a sanctuary where my heart could speak freely, revealing the depths of my soul. Even that felt corrupted now. No matter where I began, it always circled back to her. Her face, her hands, the way she gazed at me, a blend of yearning and... With a surge of emotion, it all poured out onto the page, uninvited and relentless. My sketchbook became a canvas of my thoughts. It transformed into a chronicle of unspoken words and unforgettable moments. Zoe reached out to me several times, her voice echoing in my mind. With a bright and cheerful voice, she shone like a star, a stark contrast to the heaviness that weighed on my heart. I pushed myself to play my part. It was always easy to chuckle at her jokes and immerse myself in her tales, yet every exchange served as a poignant reminder of the fragile thread I was walking on. As we walked, she kept silent about Miranda, and I chose not to pry. The unspoken bond between us lingered in the air, heavy with secrets. Like an unyielding barrier, it loomed over me, the burden of guilt, growing more oppressive with each day. One fateful afternoon, a package arrived. When the package appeared on my doorstep, it bore no return address, yet the handwriting was unmistakable. My hands trembled as I reached for it. I felt a shiver run down my spine as I carefully opened it, uncovering a small leather-bound journal nestled inside, accompanied by a handwritten note that read, "Jade, I don't know if..." Whether this will lead to improvement or complications, I felt compelled to express myself, and writing is my chosen outlet. Thank you for understanding. In a moment of reflection, I find gratitude for your patience for guiding me to rediscover emotions I believed were lost. I carry a weight of apology for the times I faltered. All that you've endured because of the hurt I've brought upon you weighs heavily on my heart. I hope that one day you'll come to see the reasons behind my farewell. Take care of yourself and keep the creativity flowing. It felt like hours listening to her words, crashing over me in waves. There was no closure, no clear resolution, just the raw emotion. The raw truth of her feelings unfolded before me as I turned the pages of the journal, revealing In a collection of scattered entries, she had penned fragments of her thoughts, both from the moments leading up to our farewell and those that followed. They were raw, chaotic, and far from complete, yet they crafted a vivid portrayal of an individual who felt just as adrift and torn as I did. Her words shattered something within me, revealing hidden depths. For what felt like an eternity, I had been wrestling with the ache within, attempting to conceal it, to forge ahead without truly confronting it. Facing the emotions that stirred within me yet. As her voice broke through the stillness, I found myself unable to respond. No longer can I escape it. I embrace every emotion, the yearning, the remorse, the fury. And the sorrow, it was chaotic and consuming, but it was genuine. And for the first time, I ceased fleeing from it. In the weeks that unfolded, a journal emerged as a steadfast companion, a lifeline I had not known I required. I found myself immersed in its pages, reading and rereading her words. Discoveries unveiling fresh depths in her expressions with every encounter as they remained elusive and unanswered. In that moment, I realized I wasn't alone in this journey. She had also borne her own burdens, sharing the weight we both carried. As time passed, I gradually regained my balance, and my creativity began to transform, evolving into something new. With a newfound honesty and rawness, I ceased my attempts to manipulate the story and allowed my emotions to lead the way, pouring them into the sketches. The creations that came to life were a departure from my previous works, strikingly bold and unapologetically raw. And profoundly intimate, they held shards of her essence intertwined with parts of myself I had yet to discover. One evening, Zoe picked up the phone, her voice softer than usual. "Hey," she said, "Mom." She brought up that she had sent you something, and the question took me by surprise. For a brief moment, I found myself at a loss for words. So I finally got it. I turned to Zoe and said, "Yeah, I said it," but she just wouldn't spill the beans on what it was. Her tone remained careful, yet there was a noticeable shift in her demeanor after she sent it, as if something had changed within her. Something changed in the air, and I paused, caught in a moment of uncertainty about how much to reveal. It was a journal, I finally admitted. With a gentle curiosity, she pondered aloud, her voice barely above a whisper. Did it help? Surprisingly, I found myself taken aback by the honesty of the answer. It truly resonated within me. There was a moment of silence on the other end of the line, and when she finally spoke again, her voice carried an emotion I couldn't quite grasp. In a moment that felt like a gentle embrace, she showed how much she truly cared for you. The words she spoke resonated deeply, striking a chord within me that I never expected. Anticipated, yet I found a way to maintain my composure. My feelings for her run deep. Once the call ended, I remained in the stillness, burdened by the heaviness of her words. Enveloped me, unexpected yet profound. Profound, marking a gentle stride toward healing. For the first time, I let my mind wander to a place where the ache didn't cut so deeply, where the ache in my chest transformed into a distant echo, a gentle nudge rather than an unyielding weight. As the months flowed by, life started to unfold anew. Once upon a time, I began to unveil my creations once more, starting with my closest companions, and as the audience grew, the reaction was beyond anything I had imagined, and for the first time I sensed a genuine connection, recognized not only for my creations, but for the raw honesty and emotion they conveyed. One evening while I was as I completed my piece for the upcoming gallery show, my phone buzzed with a message. For Miranda, I caught a glimpse of your work in the gallery's preview. It's truly beautiful, and I am captivated. My heart swelled with emotion, tears clouding my sight as I absorbed her heartfelt words, a beautiful blend of appreciation, and with a heavy heart I crafted my reply, my fingers shaking as I expressed my gratitude. I couldn't have done it without you, her reply came quickly. You could have, but I'm grateful to have been involved. Take care, Jade. Though our time was short, it made a lasting impression. A sense of tranquility enveloped me, a feeling I had long forgotten. Miranda remained intertwined with my essence, intricately stitched into the tapestry of my journey. Yet she was not the entirety of my tale. I was discovering how to hold her memory close without allowing it to shape my identity, as a tribute to what we once shared. As I carefully placed the finished painting in its crate, I took a moment to gaze at it one last time, a bold vision captured on canvas, an abstract creation brimming with hues and feelings. It transcended mere representation of her, embodying a deeper essence of reminded me of all the trials I had faced and the transformation I was undergoing for the first. In those fleeting months, a sense of belonging enveloped me, as if I had finally arrived at the very place I was destined to be.